What's up everybody, my name is Takuma Matsui. I'm a producer and instructor here at 343 Labs in New York City. This is a follow-up to our last video on layering sounds, and today I want to focus on layering drum sounds. Layering drum sounds is both technical and creative in that we're thinking about things like phase and transients, but also things like texture and the overall personality of the sound. As always, the project file that I'm using for this video is available for download. Let's get started. So I'm going to start off with a simple groove with kick, snare, and percussion, only using Live's drum synths. Let's check it out. Let's start off with the kick. This drum synth kick is cool, but it's a little bit flat and one-dimensional for my taste. I'm gonna think about the kick in three distinct layers, one for the initial attack or the transient, one for the body, and one for the sub that we can really feel in the chest. Let's head on into samples, and let's see what we can find in Ableton sample folder. You can hear some of these have really great attacks. Some of these have a more solid body. And some provide really strong subs. I'm going to start off with this 808 layer. Let's drag this in. And on top of this, let's layer a sound with a little bit more body. I think I like this one. I'm going to create a new audio track and drag this in. And here are the two sounds together. These two sounds work pretty nicely together, but there's a little bit of a frequency overlap that's taking away the clarity of the sub. For this, I'm going to add an EQ into my body layer. Turn on high pass. And I'm going to filter out the very bottoms of the sound. That feels pretty good. Let's trim the sub layer and fade this out. Same with my body layer. And now let's layer one more sound to accentuate the attack portion of the kick. I'm mostly listening for sounds with a lot more high end than the other two sounds that we had. This one feels pretty good. Let's add a new audio track. Call this one Attack. And let's drag the sound in. Again, I want to minimize as much frequency overlap as possible, so I'm going to add an EQ in here. And filter out the bottom. Let's adjust the balance of these three layers. One last thing I want to check is the phase of these three layers, more specifically the sub and the body layer. I want to make sure that when one sound is pushing out on the speaker, another sound is not pulling back, resulting in phase cancellation. To do a simple check, I'm going to add a utility onto one of the layers. Flip the phase. And just check which one sounds better. I actually think it sounds better when I don't invert the phase, so I'm going to take this off. And finally, let's group these sounds together. And apply drum bus to glue them together. Pop up the transients. Let's move on to the snare. I think for the snare, I want to have a little bit of fun with this. Let's create an audio track. And I'm going to start by replacing this with a different snare sound altogether. I like this one. Let's drag this in. So we could, in theory, add more snare sounds and clap sounds and fatten this sound up, but I think I want to try something a little bit more creative. Down here I have a field recording of some paper crinkle. I'm going to take a portion of this and I'm going to layer this with a snare. Let's create a new audio track and paste. Here's the two sounds together. Let's shorten the tail and add a fade. Let's do one more of this. I'm going to press Command T for another audio track. Head on down to where I have my samples. Let's paste the sound. Add a fade. And just to add a little bit of contrast, I'm going to pan these sounds left and right. And for this sound, I think a little bit of saturation could go a long way. Here's saturator on the group. Let's add some drive and take off the same amount of decibels from the output. I'm going to keep soft clipping on and a little bit of drum bus. I'm going to copy and paste these layers to wherever I had the MIDI tracks. And here's what we have so far. Last but not least, we have the toms. For this track, I want to explore a generative process of layering in that we're going to get different combinations of layers every time we play the track. Down here in the audio file track, I have a bunch of different field recordings. I'm going to start by removing this drum synth. And under Instruments, I'm going to choose Instrument Rack and drag this in. Let's open up the chain list and select all of these clips and drag them into the chain list. And now here's what we get. Now right now, this instrument rack is playing all of the samples all at once. Instead, I want to create a sort of a round-robin system where we can play different samples each time this instrument rack receives a new MIDI note. To do this, I'm going to open up the Chain Select editor, take one of the sounds and drag this out all the way to 127, Control click, and select Distribute Ranges Equally. Now here's what's going on. When the chain selector is between the value of 0 and 7 here, we get this first sound. Between 7 and 15, we get this sound. 16 to 23, this sound. And so on and so forth. Finally, what I want to do is I want to have this chain selector move to a different position every time this instrument rack recognizes a new MIDI note. For that, we can go into MIDI effects, select expression control, and I can use this to randomize the position of the chain select editor. I'm going to select random, press map, and click on the chain select ruler. Now, whenever this track receives a new MIDI input, the chain selector ruler jumps to random positions. Here's what we have now. Let's duplicate this entire layer. And now we get new layer combinations every time this track is played. Now, if this process is a little bit too random for you, you can always create a new audio track, select resample as its input, and commit the system into an audio track. I'm personally okay with a little bit of randomness, so I'm going to keep this off. And finally, here's the entire track. So as you can see, drum layering can be meticulously technical, but it could also be creative and open-ended. For me, it's a great way to add a little bit of life back to familiar sample packs or create field recordings. I hope you found some of these techniques and workflows to be useful in your own productions. Again, my name is Takuma Matsui, here with 343 Labs in New York City. For more information on our courses in New York, Berlin, or online, check us out at 343labs.com. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you again next time.